Good morning. This morning we will see that heroes come through when needed most. To begin, can you think of a moment when it was important for you to be on time?
Oh, sorry. Oh, I know I'm late.
Yes, you are late.
I was just trying out my new Lord of the Rings mask. What do you think?
Oh, it's very nice.
Pretty
yes.
epic.
Yes.
What were you asking?
Can you think of a time, a moment, when it was important for you to be on time? Probably won't be very hard for you.
No, not really. I can't think of that. You're usually the late one.
What?
I've never been late a day in my life.
You just came in late to film this video, Aaron.
Oh, I meant before today in my life. I've never been late before today.
Oh.
You see, Krista, in sports, you have to have certain reflexes and reactions and have just the right exact amount and the right timing to make the play. Oh. And in cooking, you need to have the right mix, the bake, all the time, the ingredients, the temperatures to get the best results.
That's
right?
true. From what I recall, you're not very good at cooking.
I make a mean bowl of cereal. And just earlier today, actually, I was trying to get that mosquito that was in the house.
Oh, yeah,
and
that
I had
mosquito.
to have just the right timing to get him.
Yeah, that's very true. You know, those are really good examples. In the Bible, we see that it's important for us to think about timing. We're called to use our time wisely for the glory of God. In Ephesians chapter 5, verses 15 and 16, it says, "Look carefully then how you walk, not as unwise, but as wise, making the best use of time because the days are evil." Sometimes this might look like how you prioritize your day. Like if you're like, okay, I have these 10 different things that I need to do, it's kind of looking at all those different tasks and saying which ones need to be done first. Maybe not which ones do I want to do first, but which tasks need to be done first, which are most important. Other times, making the best use of our time looks like working against laziness, right? And ungodliness, looking to say, okay, I have this many hours in the day, how can I use them fully for the glory of God?
That reminds me, in many of the superhero stories that we've seen, the hero comes through just when needed most. It reminds me of actually Gandalf. Yes, he's a hero to me.
Is he?
In the Hobbit movie, he showed up just at the right moment when the dwarves and Bilbo were about to be eaten by the three trolls. He broke the rock and let the light come in, and the trolls turned to stone. And then later, when the same dwarves and Bilbo were about to be captured by the goblins in the mountains, Gandalf comes out of nowhere, tells him to take up arms and fight. And then in Lord of the Rings, Gandalf shows at Bilbo's party and says, "No, Frodo, I arrived precisely when I meant to." And then at Helm's Deep, when they were about to be overtaken, he shows up with Eomer.
And you know what? I know you like Lord of the Rings very much, but I don't know if Gandalf is considered a superhero. Do you think he's a superhero? He's not like Superman or Batman or
Agree to disagree.
Spider-Man.
Okay, but the point is, when someone is needing rescue, the hero swoops in right before a disaster. And as Christians, we are called to look for where the gospel is needed and where people need help. And in doing so, we are called to trust in God's timing and not on our own expectations.
Absolutely. In our Bible story today, we are going to see how Jesus trusts in God's timing and relies on God's sovereignty. We are going to see the disciples learn to put their trust in God's saving power. Our story today comes from John chapter 11, and in this chapter we see Lazarus and his two sisters, Mary and Martha. Now Jesus is not with them, he's away from them, but he gets word sent to him from the sisters, from Mary and Martha, telling Jesus about Lazarus. Their letter said,
"Lord, he whom you love is ill."
So Jesus learns that Lazarus, who it seems like was a good friend of his, is sick, is very, very ill. But when Jesus hears, let's remember that Jesus is God, right? Jesus has knowledge that we don't have. And so he tells the disciples,
"This illness does not lead to death. It is for the glory of God, so that the Son of God may be glorified through it."
Okay, so he hears that he's ill, but then he's telling them, you know what, we're not going to go right now, right? The disciples have seen that Jesus can heal. They've seen that he can miraculously heal people, and they probably are thinking, let's go to him right now, right? They're saying, let's go help him before he gets too sick. And Jesus is saying, you know what? this is not going to lead to death. It's going to be okay. And so he ends up staying for a while longer. And then eventually he says,
let's go to Judea again.
Now this made the disciples afraid, and they said,
Rabbi, the Jews were just now seeking to stone you, to kill you, and you're going there again?
Okay, so not only is he going back to help Lazarus, but there's also this kind of imminent danger there where they're saying there's lots of people there who are angry with you, who don't like you. Do we really want to go there? And Jesus says to them,
Are there not 12 hours in the day? If anyone walks in the day, he does not stumble, because he sees the light of this world. But if anyone walks in the night, he stumbles, because the light is not in him. Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I will go to awaken him.
Nice. Here Jesus is giving them such an important lesson. Jesus is showing them what it looks like to trust God. He hears his friend is sick, but he is trusting God, right? He knows from God that it's going to be okay. He hears that there is danger, but he is trusting God. He is trusting that God will keep them safe. So they say that they're going to go. Now, Jesus said that their friend Lazarus had fallen asleep. And in using that language, at first the disciples are like, yeah, kind of falling asleep, right? They just think, oh, he fell asleep. That might even be good for him, right? Usually when you sleep, when you're sick, usually you get better, right? Usually it helps. So at first they're thinking, oh, well, that's maybe good that he's asleep. But Jesus says,
Lazarus has died. And for your sake, I'm glad I was not there, so that you may believe. But let us go to him.
And at this, one of the disciples, Thomas, says,
Let us also go, that we may die with him.
Okay, now in saying this, think, Jesus is saying, you know what, I need to tell you, even though I use the words falling asleep, it says he told them plainly, like, he is dead right now, but it maybe is good for you that he died so you can believe, right? They're having a problem with trusting God. They're seeing the dangers around them. They're seeing sickness around them, and they're taking their eyes off Jesus, just like how in our lesson a few weeks ago, Peter took his eyes off Jesus, and they're losing their trust in God. And Jesus is saying, no, he already told them, right? This sickness will not lead to death. Meaning that Lazarus is ultimately not going to stay dead. So when Thomas says, let's go die with him, he's mourning, he's upset, he's saying, this is horrible, I feel like I want to die as well. But Jesus is going to show them the power of God. So Jesus leads his disciples to the house of Lazarus. There's lots of people there. Remember, his sisters Mary and Martha are there. And as Jesus comes near, Martha comes out of the house and she says to Jesus,
Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now I know that whatever you ask from God, he'll give it to you.
Okay, so Martha here is showing her faith, right? She's saying, I know you are God. I know you have the power to raise him, right? I know that if you ask, God will give you anything that you ask, right? She's showing her faith, but it's clear that she still doesn't really understand what he's doing. I'm sure she was maybe even a little bit upset that Jesus waited so long before coming to see them. So he tells her, like, your brother's going to rise again. It's going to be okay. And she says,
I know that he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day.
Okay, so she's thinking that he's meaning that Lazarus will be alive in heaven. And Jesus says to her very clearly, I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, though he die, yet shall he live. And everyone who lives and believes in me shall never die. Do you believe this? And she answers,
Yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, who has come into the world.
What an amazing statement. Jesus here reveals himself as God. He says, I am Lord. I am the resurrection. I am life, right? He tells her that whoever puts their trust in him will have eternal life. And he asks her, do you really believe this? Do you really trust in this? Or are you like the disciples who maybe at the first sign of danger or the first sign of something going wrong, they start to lose their faith? She ends up going to get her sister Mary, and when Mary sees Jesus, Mary says,
Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died.
And in this, in talking about where is Lazarus and seeing that he is laid into a tomb, Jesus cries. It says Jesus wept. In this part, we see how much Jesus cared for Lazarus, right? They were good friends. We see that this was really important to him. And we see Jesus just broken by the brokenness in the world, that we have sickness and we have death and dying in this world. And he is broken by this, right? He cared very much for Lazarus. All of the people who were there saw that Jesus was crying. They saw that Jesus loved him as a friend. And they said,
could he who opened the eyes of the blind could have kept this man from dying as well?
Right? They're showing that they lack faith. They're saying, wait a second, we've seen Jesus heal people who were blind and heal people who couldn't walk and heal people who are sick. What is he doing, right? They're not understanding. And sometimes in this life, we have times like that too, where we think something is going to happen, and when it doesn't, we start saying, what's going on, God? Do you not care? Are you not with me? But think, Jesus is here crying, thinking about how much he loved Lazarus, thinking about just how sad it was that he and his family were going through this. We see clearly that Jesus cared. Jesus goes up to the tomb. There's a stone covering the tomb, and he says, take away the stone. And Martha says,
Lord, by this time there's going to be an odor. He's been dead for 4 days. It's going to smell in there.
Now this was just Martha who said, I believe you can do anything. And now she's hearing Jesus say, well, okay, let's roll with a stone. Let's get this going. And she's thinking, wait, this is going to be disgusting, right? I don't think you want to do this. She's not really understanding what Jesus has the power to do. Jesus said to her, did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God? And then he prays, he says, Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me. But I said this on account of the people standing around, that they may believe that you sent me. And then in a loud voice it says that he said, Lazarus, come out. And Lazarus, who had died, who had been dead for 4 days, was raised again to life and walked out of the tomb. And Jesus said, unbind him and let him go. We see in this passage that heroes come through when needed most. As Christians, we are called to trust in God's timing. We know that even when it seems like God is not working, he is. Yep. Even when it seems like everything is crazy around us and nothing is going the way that we expect, that God is sovereign. God is always working for our ultimate good and for his glory. Sometimes though, it might take a really long time to see it. This week, I'm going to give you a challenge. How can you trust God's timing this week?
You know, I thought of an opportunity for me to trust in God's timing this week, and it has to do with the new church building.
Oh, yeah.
We're almost there, but it's been about that. Like the past year and a half, it's looking so different than what we thought it would look like when we first started this process and journey about when it would open, what our country would be going through, right, with all this crazy COVID stuff and all these unknown health scares out there. And so for me, it's been like, well, when are we going to open? What will it look like? Do I get to tell my friends? Do I have to wear a mask? Do we, all these unknowns. So like, who knows? But I get to go through this as an opportunity to trust in God, that he is sovereign, and trust in his timing of how it's all unfolding.
You know, I really think that if we allow God to work in our hearts this week and in this time, that we would just see our trust of God deepening. When things are so crazy around you and you don't really know what's going on, you always can trust that God is sovereign, he cares for you, and he loves you, and that he is working even if it seems like he's not. This week I'm going to encourage you, I'm going to encourage us to encourage each other to trust God's timing. When you are doubting, when things are getting anxious around you, when you maybe see someone else, I'm going to encourage you to stop, to pray, to speak truth to your heart, to remind yourself that God is in control. He knows what he's doing. He's around and he's in control even when it seems like he's not. Have a wonderful week.
See you.